So good afternoon, everyone. I'll be speaking on a very challenging complication of diabetic retinopathy, that is a combined retinal detachment. Now, a combined retinal detachment is a combination of a tractional and a rhegmatogenous retinal detachment. And I feel it's one of the most challenging situations for a vitreoretinal surgeon because in this situation, you not only have to safely remove the adherent fibrovascular tissue, the retina is thinned out, ischemic, and mobile. And at the same time, it's imperative that you do not cause any iatrogenic breaks or cause very minimal iatrogenic trauma to the retina. So, a combined detachment has retinal breaks in association with fibrovascular proliferation, which could be of varying severity. These retinal breaks are likely to appear when the tractional force acts on a thin retina in a PDR patient, and they are generally located adjacent to the proliferative tissue or even near previous laser marks. So, whenever you're doing a laser, it's very important that you keep some amount of distance in between your TRD and the laser, otherwise, it could lead to a combined detachment. So combined detachment, when you see a TRD converting into a convex configuration, you suspect that this is a combined detachment. A combined detachment would not follow the Linkoff's rules. It would usually reach up till the ora serrata, but in some areas it may not because it may be limited by the laser that you've done. It may be limited by the fibrovascular proliferation. So it could just be any kind of a configuration. An important thing that would make you suspect a combined detachment would be that the subretinal fluid would extend beyond the fibrovascular proliferation. In a TRD, it would be limited to the area of traction, but here, as you see there on the nasal side, the fluid is where there's no traction. You'll also see fluid in that area, so that makes you suspect it's gone into a combined situation. These breaks are slit-like, they could be round, they could be oval, they could be sieve-like. Sieve-like when there are multiple breaks along a a very heavy laser that you've done, that could also cause breaks. They could be at the base of a fibrovascular proliferation. And many a times they are hidden under the retinal folds or covered by the fibrovascular tissue. So many times you will not be able to preoperatively locate a break in spite of all efforts. And a macular hole could also cause a combined detachment. Another thing that would make you suspect a combined detachment is when you see subretinal bands in a tractional detachment. So subretinal bands and also subretinal hemorrhage, they are very key giveaways that this patient has a break somewhere. The risk of a tractional detachment converting to a combined detachment is, of course, a long-standing TRD. Heavy laser, as I mentioned before, if done near the edge of a tractional detachment. Anti-VEGF injections because they induce fibrous contraction of the proliferative tissue. And of course, iatrogenic when you're operating a tractional detachment and you induce a break. That was also called a combined detachment where your retina starts becoming bullous. So this is a patient who had a tractional detachment. Over the course of 4 years, one day he came back with a sudden diminution of vision, and here you see in the inferior part, you can see that he has a combined detachment now. That's the rhegmatogenous component. So the types of combined detachments could be that could be a detachment which has active fibrovascular tissue, or it could be an avascular fibrotic tissue. This is the late chronic cases where the tissue has become avascular. So the visual outcomes are of course better in cases which have active fibrovascular tissue because the retina is still not that ischemic. And if you treat it preoperatively with anti-VEGF, then you get good visual outcomes as compared to the avascular fibrotic tissue presentation where the retina has become ischemic, thin, friable. Now, in the preoperative workup, a good patient counseling is imperative because you may be able to get anatomical attachments in many situations, but the visual outcomes may not keep up with your anatomical. As I mentioned, the retina is thin, ischemic, may have been detached for a pretty long time. So please temper the expectations of the patient. Do not give them very high hopes because in spite of a very well done surgery, the visual outcomes may not be that great. Laser the untreated areas before the surgery. Do look out for the breaks if possible because in your head you'll have a better idea. So if you can search for the breaks very meticulously, they may be hidden like I mentioned. A preoperative OCT helps to give you the configuration of the retinal detachment and also prognosticate, especially when you look at the outer retina and see the external limiting membrane and the ellipsoid zone. They would give you an idea on how to prognosticate the patient. So pre-op anti-VEGF, of course, definitely helps in whenever there's a lot of fibrovascular tissue. So in the fibrotic cases, like I showed you, you do not need to give anti-VEGF injections. But if there's a lot of fibrovascular proliferation, as you see there, 3 to 4 days before surgery is what I do. Now there are different variations. Different surgeons have different views. Some like to give it a week before, some 1 day before. But I think 3 to 4 days is a good, a good number of days. Do not, if you feel that the patient will not be able to come for surgery, or if the patient is too ill, then do not give the anti-VEGF, because if you keep a very long gap between your surgery and the anti-VEGF, the tissue becomes really fibrous and thick, and it may become very difficult to identify the planes if you give a very long interval. So make sure your patient is fit for surgery before you give your anti-VEGF injection. So the basic principles of the surgery, of course, are to ensure media clarity. These are very challenging surgeries where, it's very critical that you have very good visibility. So if you have to do a cataract, even small lens opacities could hinder your surgery. So you could do a prior cataract surgery. A combined surgery can also be done, but I think in such cases, it would, create a very long surgical time for the patient. Also, the cornea sometimes becomes edematous on table. So my preference is to do a prior cataract surgery and then take up these patients. You release the anterior-posterior and the tangential traction, remove all the epiretinal membranes and the posterior hydroid. Be sure not to create iatrogenic breaks, because in this case, there's a lot of fibrovascular tissue on the retina. If you create an iatrogenic break, it is important that you clear off the area around the break of all hyaloid tissue, all membranes, so that you do not have so that the retina settles and you do not have a redetachment. It is important to control the operative hemorrhage. You can raise the bottle height, but what many times I see is that, the bottle height is increased and the assistant or the surgeon forgets to bring it down. In these cases, the optic nerve is very fragile and ischemic. So please keep a watch on the bottle height. If you've increased the bottle height to prevent hemorrhage, then after 2 minutes maybe, you should bring it down. So like I said, the break recognition sometimes is difficult, but when you see fluid coming out of it, the Schellen phenomenon, that is the time when you can identify the break. And whenever you see there may be more than one break in a particular case, and it is important to relieve the traction around the break. To reattach the retina, you can do a fluid air exchange, a fluid air exchange. You can also use PFCL. The key is to find the right plane of dissection, and the inside-out approach works well, where you find a plane at the optic nerve and then you start dissecting towards the periphery. You use segmentation, delamination, and bimanual techniques can also be used. So I'll just show you how So at the optic nerve, the retina is the thickest, and when you create a plane at the optic nerve, there is a very less chance that you'll create a break in the posterior retina. So the optic disc is a very good place to create your plane, and then you can dissect out the tissue towards the periphery. So this is a case of combined attachment. So here, like I mentioned here, you segment all these attachments to the retina. So at this time, the retina is not very mobile. It's easy to segment these attachments. 27 gauge cutter works very well in this, because it's thin, it can easily get in under the retina. The port is located right at the tip. So the cutter can be used to delaminate as well as segment, and if there's a bleeder, you can just press with the cutter itself to stop the bleeding. Here you see this sheet of tissue. Sometimes there's also vitreoskisis, so after you've removed these membranes, be sure to stain with Tricot. Also, Tricot use should be very little in quantity, because sometimes it can go inside the break also, since the break is under traction. And here you see the fluid gushing out. That was the break which was at the border of that fibrovascular proliferation. Preoperatively, I could not see the break. And you see this fluid exchange being done and the retina being settled. Sometimes when they're very thick fibrovascular and very adherent fibrovascular proliferation. So for every case, your surgical approach has to be different. It has to be tailored to the patient's to the patient's presentation. It's like getting a sticker off from a bottle. Sometimes it may come out totally. Sometimes you may have to scratch it on the surface. So every patient behaves differently. And bimanual dissection is a good technique to know and to practice whenever these membranes are very adherent. So for that, you have to put in a chandelier light. You can put in either one chandelier or two chandeliers and then lift up with the forceps and cut with the curved scissors. So these scissors can be used to cut as well as to create a plane under the retina. When you keep the scissors closed, you create a plane underneath and then identify the pegs and then go on cutting those pegs. PFCL has been used in this case. Whenever you're using PFCL, be very careful because these breaks are under traction, and in such situations, it's very easy for the PFCL to migrate under the retina. So subretinal, so stay well away from the breaks whenever you're using PFCL in these conditions. So this is a case, the case I showed you in the beginning, which is settled after surgery. So post-operatively, of course, you need to identify the breaks. You can do cautery around the breaks and do a very good pan-retinal photocoagulation. And for tamponade, you could use gas or oil. And with modern instruments and techniques, the anatomical success rate is high in these cases. Earlier, they were very challenging situation to manage. But again, as I mentioned before, the visual outcomes may not keep pace with your anatomical outcomes, and that has to be told to the patient. Thank you so much.